I was stirring the ashes of last night's fire when the gravel crunched beneath her heels. Sharp. Deliberate. The sound of someone who thought they owned the place. I stood up slow, dusting soot from my hands, and there she was, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, lips pursed so tightly they could slice granite. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. I blinked. Looked at the cabin. Looked at her. "Ma'am," I said, "I built this place with my own 2 hands." She snorted, an actual snort, and adjusted her sunglasses. "Don't get cute. This property falls under the Lake Shimmer HOA and your occupancy is unauthorized. You have 10 minutes to vacate or I'm calling the police." That was the first time she said it. But it wouldn't be the last. Let me rewind. My name's Colt Brenner, 41 years old, former Marine, now a restoration architect with a deep love for timber, mountains, and quiet. I inherited this lake cabin from my grandfather, Earl Brenner, a local legend who once ran every sawmill, hardware store, and county auction in Shimmer Valley. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I wasn't just some squatter in a lakeside shack. My name is on every land deed stretching from Widow's Ridge to the far end of Mulberry Creek. Technically, the HOA didn't own so much as a blade of grass under her chair during their monthly board meetings. But I never advertised that fact. Until she called 911. It all started about 6 weeks earlier, the first time I spotted Karen Whitfield, HOA president, self-appointed, property integrity officer, and local storm cloud, on my land. I had just returned from a 2-month field project restoring a historic barn near Colorado Springs. Came back to find the trail leading to my dock freshly graveled. A wooden sign had been staked at the bend, Lake Shimmer Shared Recreational Zone, HOA members only. I thought it was a prank. Until I followed the trail and saw 3 newly installed benches with brass plates engraved with board member names. One of them said, Karen W. in a loopy script. There was even a solar-powered trash receptacle mounted beside the old oak tree I'd planted as a kid. So, I did what any rational person would do. I pulled up the sign, carried it down to the dock, and burned it in the fire pit. I didn't think much of it after that. But apparently, the fire woke the beast. 2 days later, she arrived with a folder, a smirk, and an attitude forged in a factory of pettiness. She told me I was in violation of HOA bylaws 3.1, 5.4, and 9.2. When I pointed out that the HOA didn't actually have jurisdiction over my land, she waved her hand like I was a mosquito. "We'll see what the sheriff thinks." It would have been comical if it wasn't so brazen. The next week, I caught a landscaping crew trying to beautify the area around the cabin with HOA funds. They had bright orange vests and printed work orders authorizing removal of unsanctioned structures. One of those structures was my woodshed. Another was my solar water heater. I told them politely to leave. They did. But Karen? She doubled down. That Friday, I was fishing off the dock when a loudspeaker shattered the calm. "This is Sergeant Melton with Shimmer County Sheriff's Department. Step away from the property and show your hands." For a second, I thought it was a joke. Then I saw the cruiser. Then I saw Karen, standing behind it, waving her clipboard like it was a battle flag. She'd actually called the sheriff. Sergeant Melton stepped out of the cruiser, his boots crunching on pine needles. He looked around, adjusting his belt like a man who just realized he wasn't walking into a simple noise complaint. Karen, standing beside him in a peach pantsuit and matching visor, jabbed her finger toward me. "There. That man. He's trespassing. Squatting, actually. And possibly armed." Her voice cracked with the kind of faux hysteria reserved for daytime court TV. Melton didn't flinch. "Sir," he said to me calmly, "we got a call about an unauthorized occupant on HOA-managed land. Mind showing me some ID and maybe letting me know what's going on?" I nodded. "Absolutely." I walked past Karen, who huffed and stepped back as if my breath might ruin her manicure, and disappeared inside the cabin. A few moments later, I returned with two things, my driver's license and a dusty black leather folder. I handed over the ID first. Name's Colt Brenner. Melton's eyebrows raised. Brenner? As in? I opened the folder and held it out. Inside were 11 property deeds. All current. All notarized. All in my name. This cabin sits on plot 47. Which happens to be the original Brenner holding. But you'll see I also own plots 48 through 52, and plots 61 through 69 over there on the east side of the lake. He flipped through them silently. His fingers slowed when he got to the aerial map I included in the back, an overlay from the county office showing every property boundary. My holdings were clearly outlined in blue. Karen subdivision. A neat little cluster boxed in by a massive L-shaped parcel. My parcel. Karen leaned over his shoulder and scoffed. This doesn't prove anything. He probably printed that map at home. Melton gave her a long, flat stare. Ma'am, I've seen these official maps dozens of times. They're sealed, stamped, and I can tell you now, this man owns more than just this cabin. He looked back at me. What's the story here, Mr. Brenner? I took a breath. My grandfather, Earl Brenner, bought this land back when it was just a forgotten valley of old cattle trails and timber rights. He never sold an inch of it, just leased what people thought were lots in good faith. Somewhere along the line, developers got sloppy, and the HOA started pretending their oversight extended where it didn't. I kept quiet for years, because I didn't want the headache. I turned toward Karen. But that was before someone called the cops on me. On my land. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a pine cone. I want him cited for harassment, she spat. He burned a community sign. He threatened vendors. Melton folded the folder closed and handed it back to me. Then he took out a small notepad and looked directly at Karen. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to explain how you came to the conclusion this land falls under HOA jurisdiction. Karen blinked. It's always been treated that way. But legally, he asked. Silence. I watched her face twitch, caught between indignation and panic. It was like watching a spreadsheet crash in real time. She glanced around like a camera crew might rescue her from reality. I'm filing a formal complaint, she snapped. You'll be hearing from the HOA's legal team. I look forward to it, I said. Make sure they include a map. Melton turned to me again. Sir, you're not under investigation for anything. You're clearly the legal landowner here. I'd recommend you document any future contact and maybe think about installing a gate. I already have, I said. Twice. She tore both of them down. Melton sighed like a man who just remembered why he hated paperwork. He turned back to his cruiser and radioed something into dispatch. Karen was still there, arms crossed, muttering to herself. When she realized no one was backing her up, she spun on her heel and marched off toward her SUV, clipping one of her own heels on a tree root and nearly falling into a patch of mud. She didn't look back. But I did. I looked at that ridge above the lake, where the HOA had staked their clubhouse. I looked at the gravel trail they laid without permission. I thought about the vendors, the planners, the wedding flyers they'd already printed. Karen thought she'd won. But the sheriff's visit was just the beginning. Because what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I wasn't just the landowner. I was about to become her landlord. See, nestled in that stack of old deeds was one Karen had overlooked. Plot 65. Leased 20 years ago to Shimmer Development LLC. The same land where they built the HOA office. And guess whose name was still listed as the lessor? Mine. 3 days after the sheriff left my property with a handshake and an apology, I stood in the parking lot of the Shimmer Lake HOA office holding a manila envelope. I had printed 3 copies of the letter inside, each stamped, sealed, and notarized. As I approached the front door, I saw Karen through the glass, pacing behind her desk, phone in hand, a familiar storm brewing across her forehead. Perfect timing. I opened the door. The bell jingled. She turned. Her lips flattened. "You have no appointment," she said curtly, slamming her phone on the desk. "I'm not here to chat," I replied. "Just delivering this." I placed the envelope gently on her desk, like a waiter serving a meal with a hidden bomb underneath. She eyed it. "What's this?" "Official notification of lease termination. Plot 65. Her eyes narrowed. "What lease?" I leaned in slightly. "The one your precious HOA clubhouse was built on." She blinked. Then laughed. "That building belongs to the HOA. We've operated out of here for 17 years. On land that was leased by Shimmer Development LLC in 2005. For 20 years. Not a day longer." She opened the envelope with trembling fingers, and as she scanned the letter, her cheeks turned the shade of overripe cherries. She flipped to the attached map, scanned the legal property number, then stopped when she saw the name. Lessor, Colt J. Brenner. Her hands dropped. "You're bluffing." I smiled. "Call the county clerk." It took exactly 20 minutes for Karen to call an emergency board meeting. I didn't attend. I was too busy posting a copy of the lease termination letter on the HOA's front door, right beneath the plaque that read, "Karen Whitfield, President." The news traveled faster than wildfire on dry pine. By sunset, I had 5 voicemails, 3 text messages from board members asking to resolve this privately, and 1 hastily typed email begging for a sit-down. I ignored them all. The next morning, I drove into town and handed the same letter to a local journalist named Andrea Pike. She ran a regional blog called the Valley Sentinel, a feisty independent publication with a knack for uncovering small-town scandals. She took one look at the paperwork and said, "This is going to blow up like fireworks in a gas station." I nodded. "Just make sure Karen's quote goes in bold." The article dropped that Friday. HOA office built on leased land, lease expires next month. Landowner declines renewal. The story included copies of the original lease, quotes from county records, and even a map showing how much land I actually owned, well beyond the HOA's assumed boundaries. Karen, predictably, responded with her usual brand of denial. "There must be some mistake," she told the reporter. "We were under the impression the property was gifted to the HOA. But the paper included a screenshot of the county's land registry system with one name circled in red. Colt Brenner." Suddenly, the power dynamic flipped. Residents began questioning everything. Had Karen really been authorized to issue all those fines? Why was she using HOA funds for event planning expenses? And most importantly, what else didn't they know? By Monday, the board was in full panic mode. They tried charm. A bottle of wine appeared on my porch, labeled, "From your neighbors, let's talk." I gave it to my UPS driver. They tried guilt. Karen emailed me, "You're hurting the community. These people rely on us." I responded with a single sentence, "Then maybe you should have read the lease." Then they tried threats. A letter arrived from some bottom-shelf law firm threatening to sue me for destabilizing the HOA's operations. I passed it along to my cousin Angie, who replied by FedExing them a letter so loaded with legal citations it might as well have been bound in leather. By Thursday, I posted one final document to the front door of the HOA office. Notice to vacate, 30 days. Signed. Stamped. Irrevocable. The fallout was delicious. Karen's supporters dropped like flies. Board members resigned. The Facebook page went dark. Neighbors started coming out of the woodwork with horror stories, bogus citations, forged minutes, even rumors that Karen had been quietly billing the HOA for consulting time. I didn't even need to retaliate. I just let the truth do its job. But here's where it gets really interesting. 1 week after the eviction notice went up, I got a call from someone unexpected, the mayor of Shimmer Lake, Alan Grigsby. He asked to meet. We sat down over coffee and small-town biscuits at Millie's Cafe, and he got straight to the point. "Colt," he said, "how would you feel about selling a portion of your land to the county?" I tilted my head. "What for?" "To build a new community center. Somewhere inclusive. Neutral ground. No HOA involvement." I leaned back in my chair, considering it. And then it hit me. Karen tried to run me off my own land, only to get kicked out of hers. But if I played this right, I wouldn't just be her landlord. I'd be her replacement. The morning of the final week began with a red balloon tied to my mailbox. A childish gesture, probably from one of Karen's more unhinged loyalists. The string was tangled through a handmade sign that read, "You'll never be part of this community." I laughed out loud. I already was the community, at least the part of it that didn't involve HOA nonsense. The irony was almost too perfect. But things were about to get even more poetic. That very afternoon, I stood outside the HOA office with 2 county marshals and a clipboard of paperwork that would make even the cockiest property manager cry. Inside, Karen was holding what she called a last stand board meeting, though it was mostly just her and a nervous treasurer named Myron who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. The marshals knocked once. Karen opened the door mid-rant, still holding a whiteboard marker in one hand and a copy of Robert's Rules of Order in the other. "Whatever you're selling, we're not interested," she snapped. One marshal held up a thick envelope. "Ma'am, you've been served." She blinked. What is this?" The other marshal stepped forward. "Eviction notice. Final. This building is to be vacated within 72 hours. Failure to comply may result in forcible removal and fines." She took the envelope with trembling fingers, her manicured nails tapping the seal like it might explode. But this is our headquarters." The first marshal didn't blink. Not anymore. Word spread like wildfire. By nightfall, photos of Karen holding the eviction notice went viral in the Shimmer Lake Facebook group. Someone zoomed in on her face and captioned it, "When your HOA forgets who owns the actual land." The reactions were savage. "So she's the squatter now? Can we get Colt to be mayor next?" Plot twist, he's been the landlord this whole time. But not everyone was cheering. A few die-hard HOA defenders accused me of destroying order, as if the HOA was some kind of sacred temple instead of a committee that fined kids for sidewalk chalk. I stayed quiet publicly, but I kept a private journal. Because when Karen's foundation finally collapsed, I wanted to remember every detail. On Thursday, I received a call from the State Housing Board. They'd received multiple formal complaints from Shimmer Lake residents citing harassment, abuse of authority, and illegal misappropriation of funds, all pointing back to Karen. Apparently, once word got out about the eviction, people stopped being afraid of her. They opened their mouths, their inboxes, and their photo albums. One man sent in screenshots of fake parking citations she'd issued to guests. Another shared a video of her slapping a camera out of a child's hand for recording a protected neighborhood meeting. The best came from Myron, the jittery treasurer. He emailed me a spreadsheet. The subject line was, "I can't do this anymore." Inside was a full list of Karen's special expenses, including $1,248 for executive brunches, $3,812 for seasonal wardrobe coordination, $985 for a home office remodel that just happened to include a hot tub. He also sent a PDF titled, "Minutes that were never approved." Turns out Karen had been inventing board meetings. Whole conversations. Fake votes. All carefully formatted with timestamps, headers, and fictional names. I handed the entire packet over to Andrea Pike at the Valley Sentinel. By Sunday morning, the headline read. HOA president under investigation for fraud, abuse of power, board evicted from illegally held office. And right below it, a photo of Karen being escorted out of the building by marshals, still holding her beloved clipboard. But I wasn't done. On the Monday of eviction week, I held an open forum at the Shimmer Lake Community Center, ironically funded by a recent county grant. Dozens of neighbors showed up, some out of curiosity, some looking like they'd just escaped a cult. I stood at the front, hands in my pockets, and said, "Hi. My name is Colt Brenner. I own the land this neighborhood was built on. And for years, I stayed silent because I didn't want to stir up trouble. But now that trouble found me, I'm offering a new path forward." Then I paused, and dropped the real bomb. "I've met with the mayor. We've agreed to repurpose the old HOA building into a true community center, run by volunteers, no dues, no citations, and no weaponized bylaws. Just people looking out for each other." The applause was deafening. As for Karen, well, she tried to sue me. Claimed emotional distress, financial sabotage, reputational harm. Her lawyer, clearly unaware of who he was dealing with, sent me a letter demanding settlement negotiations. My cousin Angie handled it with surgical precision. By the time she was done, Karen's lawsuit had turned into a countersuit for defamation, property damage, and abuse of power. Last I heard, she'd moved 2 counties over and was trying to start a new HOA. Let's just say, she's not finding much success. 3 months after Karen's clipboard clattered onto the sidewalk of her final board meeting, something unexpected happened. People started showing up. Not to fight. Not to file complaints. But to help. At first, it was little things. My neighbor Chloe brought over homemade banana bread and asked if she could repaint the sign at the trailhead near the lake. Then Tom, the retired Marine who once threatened to sue the HOA over a mailbox color dispute, offered to rebuild the old dock with reclaimed cedar. Every day, more people came. The same residents who had once tiptoed around their own homes, worried about curtain colors or garden gnomes, were now trimming paths, sharing tools, planting flowers, because they wanted to. Not because they were scared of a fine. And somewhere in that quiet shift, I realized something important. Karen hadn't built a community. She had built a cage. And once the walls came down, people didn't run wild. They simply stepped outside and breathed again. I didn't set out to lead anything. Honestly, I wanted the opposite. Solitude. Space. The kind of freedom that smells like pine and wood smoke and silence. But after the HOA disbanded, and after the eviction, the investigation, the court case, which ended with a court-ordered restitution payment from Karen that went straight into a community fund, people started asking if I'd take a more official role. They used words like liaison, community land steward, and property development advisor. I told them I didn't want a title. So they made one up anyway. They started calling me the Lake Keeper. At first, I laughed it off. But then one day I got a letter from a boy named Jake, who lived 3 houses down. He was 12, homeschooled, and had drawn a picture of my cabin with a little sign out front that said, "Lake Keeper lives here. He stopped the bad lady." That one hit me. The new community center we built from the old HOA office opened on the first Saturday of October. It wasn't fancy. But it was ours. The same room Karen used to bark citations from now held potlucks, board game nights, yoga sessions, and free workshops on everything from home repair to fishing techniques. There were no dues. No fines. Just people doing what people were always meant to do, help each other, look out for the land, and share a little peace. And the best part? No one needed permission to live their life. A year later, the mayor asked if I'd consider joining the Shimmer County Planning Council. "Your knowledge of the land would be invaluable," he said. I considered it. Said I'd think about it. And I did. Late that night, I sat out on my cabin's porch, bear curled at my feet, the lake moonlit and still. It wasn't about power. It never was. It was about remembering that land isn't just soil and title deeds. It's the stage for how we treat each other. For too long, Karen had used that stage like a throne. But now, it was a gathering place. And I'd help protect that, however I could. Sometimes, I still think about the day she called 911 on me. How she stood there, smug and certain, convinced she held the law in one hand and the neighborhood in the other. How quickly everything unraveled when she realized I wasn't just some guy with a beard and a kayak. I was the one person she hadn't counted on. The one thing no HOA can control. The truth. The land. And someone willing to fight for both.